everyone, I am, as you might expect, Mr. Herb. This will be the first video introducing Lingua Latina for those of you who need more direct instruction. In this video, I will be explaining exactly how to read the book, specifically Chapter 1, and how to complete the exercises given to you all in your assignments. Unfortunately, I will not be able to provide footage of my face, so you will simply have to work with my voice for the time being. Now, if you open your book to page 7, you will see on the left page a map of the Imperium Romanum, which, as you may have guessed, means the Roman Empire. Now, throughout the chapter, there are a number of different places named in the actual text. For instance, on this page you will see Roma in Italia Est, Esne Gallia in Europa, and many others. Now, if you look at the top of the page of page 7, you will see a nice little drawing showing a city labeled Oppidum, a river labeled Fluvius, and an island labeled Insula. Both of these pictures should hopefully give you a clue about what this chapter is about. It is, for all intents and purposes, an introductory chapter allowing you to sort of get your feet wet with some comparatively easy Latin by setting the background and the context and all that other stuff before we get into the actual story of the book. Furthermore, it is showing you how the book operates. It is not like most other Latin textbooks where the Latin vocabulary words are defined for you in the vocabulary list. The grammar is explained throughout the chapter. Instead, you are meant to intuit the grammar through reading new grammatical concepts each chapter, and to figure out the vocabulary through things like context clues and by means of the two aids the book gives you. The first aid are the pictures themselves, as from the map you should be able to figure out where all the names and places that this chapter talks about are in relation to each other. And if you know if you at all know your geography, you should be able to figure out more or less where these things are in relation to modern Europe and Africa and the Middle East. Furthermore, when you encounter sentences like ubi est Sparta, Sparta est in Graecia, you can look at your map and see where both Sparta and Graecia are, and hopefully from both the text and from the map you can figure out that the word ubi means where, and so ubi est Sparta means where is Sparta, to which the obvious answer would be Sparta is in Greece. Alright, the second aid, and the one which you might either find to be more useful or less useful depending on how beneficial you find the pictures, are the margins. Now, the pictures are usually used to help define or contextualize vocabulary words, as you will see in a later chapter where a boy is punching his sister, and that is coupled with the sentence Marcus Iulium pulsat, showing that pulsat vocabulary and to explain the grammar. I do this in a couple of ways, and let's look at a couple of examples given at the very beginning. You will see that the margins note how Italia, without the word in front of it, has no line above the final A. You can see that right here. Whereas when Italia does have in front of it, it does have a little bit of a line above the final A. This line is called a macron, which is an important word because I will be using it a lot, so be sure to mark that down in your notes if you're the kind of person who likes to take notes, which all of you should be. The margins here are hinting at the fact that Latin words will change their endings depending on their context. Thus, Italia, when it is the subject of the sentence, has no macron, but when it has a preposition in front of it, it does have a macron. Alright, let's briefly go through a few examples throughout the chapter where the margins teach you grammar. Just below the previous example, here you will see Italia in Europa est versus Italia et Graecia in Europa sunt, with est and sunt being italicized. The reason is that here it is trying to teach you the difference between the singular and the plural for the verb esse, which is the Latin equivalent for the English verb to be. Thus, when it's only talking about Italy, it says Italia in Europa est, but when you're talking about Greece and Italy, the verb becomes sunt. Est, therefore, is the singular and sunt is the plural. On the top left of the next page, you will see us, e, in reference to the word fluvius used in the text, followed by nilus fluvius est versus nilus et renus fluvii sunt. Here it is showing that not only do verbs have singular and plural forms, but even nouns and adjectives, which are slightly further down. The adjectives are slightly further down, that is. Finally, there is one last bit of grammar that I want to get through, and that's the fact that you will notice here that the plurals of fluvius is fluvii, but the plural of insula is insulae, and that the plural of oppidum is oppida. The reason for this will be explained in the next chapter, but for now, all you need to know is that specific words will have different singular and plural endings, and that's just sort of fixed the way they are. However, that adjectives, as you can see here, will follow the ending. They'll generally follow the ending of whatever noun they're attached to. The technical term is modifying. I'll be using that term also very frequently, but I'll explain exactly what modifying means within the context of Latin when we get to that. All right. Finally, let us talk about how the margins work when it comes to explaining vocabulary. The first way is what it does here on page 8, where it shows two words, parvus and magnus. From the text itself, and by looking at the map, you should be able to figure out that magnus means big or large. What the line between them right here shows is that they are opposites. Thus, magnus means large and is the opposite of parvus, meaning short or small. Oftentimes throughout the book, you will see this sort of setup for a new word linked with an old word from a previous chapter, but we will get to that when we get to the later chapters. But yeah, just remember that the line in between or the opposite arrows in between means that the words have opposite meanings, basically. One means one thing, and then the other verb, or the other word means the exact opposite. All right. The other ways that margins try to explain the vocabulary can be seen on page 9 under the Literae et Numeri section. On the right margins, you will see the Roman numerals for 1, 2, and 3, paired with their Latin names unus, duo, and tres, and their standard English written form, so you can see like the 1, 2, and 3 there. And you will see that by a word or symbol that you already know, as it also does up here when it is explaining the word num by equating it with the word ne, with the ne in est ne. In other words, both ne at the end of a verb and num are simply ways of telling the reader that the sentence is a question. There are a couple more signs, like a less than sign, that you will see towards the bottom of page 8 when you can see here that it says Romanus comes from the word Roma, but I'll explain that sort of thing in slightly more depth in a later chapter. I hope that this brief introduction has at least made the act of reading the chapter slightly more intelligible for you all. Don't worry if you didn't quite get the hang of everything last week. We will be taking these chapters slowly to make sure we get through everything in a steady and even-handed and, thorough manner. If any of you are still confused about how to read the chapter or how to do any of the work, then once again I must emphasize that you should email me immediately. If you don't understand a word and simply cannot figure it out, then you are allowed to consult a Latin dictionary or look it up online, but please, I beg you, keep this to a minimum, since if you rely on it, you will never be able to remember the vocabulary, and you'll just be looking up every single word that you come across in the later chapters. Alright, that is everything for this video. In the next video, I will explain the Grammatica Latina and the pensa, or the exercises, and that should be much shorter.